Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Reggie Haynes, and today I'm going to talk about my 5 biggest regrets since moving over to Africa. My first biggest regret was not being prepared. I wasn't prepared mentally. I wasn't prepared, spiritually, but I feel like what happened was I was just rushing things. I just got through a breakup. I was living in the UK at the time. Doesn't mean that we're failures. We just move on and progress from there. But I always told myself I'm moving to Africa. I'm going to move to the motherland no matter what. Once things didn't work out in the UK, that was my next move. And people were telling me, no, Reggie, look, man, go back home. Your UK visa is about to expire. Just go back home and, regroup. And I said, no, I was just too stubborn to do so. And I ended up telling myself I am going to transition my life to the motherland. I didn't know where I was going to go first. So I started talking to certain people who were within the African community who had relatives over in the motherland. I was told, go to Ghana, go to Nigeria. I said, nah. People were like, well, what about, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi? So Malawi was on the list, and my connection there was basically telling me, like, look, Reggie, you need to go to Malawi because you'll be set up nice there. You'll be living with people who are well known. Everything will be taken care of. But unfortunately, the cyclones hit. And when the cyclones hit, I was told, Reggie, you have to scrap that plan into a later date. So I ended up going to Zimbabwe. And when I got there, I was surrounded by people who I thought I could trust, but things didn't work out that way. And it was all because I just wasn't prepared and I rushed things. My fourth biggest regret is not regrouping. When people were telling me like, hey, Reggie, go back home. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that, that you're missing out on opportunities or anything. You can always regroup, get a good job while you're in America for a short stint, stack up, and then go back, to Africa. And I was just like, nah, man, I was just too stubborn. And I got very lucky because whenever I was in Africa, I lost so much. I even had to sell a lot of my safety nets in order for me to, just survive and to eat and to have a place to live while I was in Africa. And a lot of people didn't know that. So, I always felt like, at that time I should have swallowed my pride and just went back home and regrouped. But I was very lucky because while I was in Africa, I met my African godparents, Queen Wazana and King Blaze. And then I met, 2 owners of a prestigious school in Zimbabwe, Mrs. Mupunga and Mr. Mupunga. Had it not been for them seeing, the talent that they thought that I had, I wouldn't have had an opportunity to actually be in Africa or remain in Africa and, have people who can help me get on my feet. So, I felt like, I should have regrouped, but I'm glad that I didn't because I wouldn't have met, some phenomenal people who just showed me so much love and they helped me when I needed it the most. My third biggest regret is not being economically stable. I was talking about being prepared earlier, and I felt like I wasn't, prepared when it came in regards to my finances. But I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to have a lot of people who, when I reached out to them, I was like, hey, if you need any video editing work done or anything done, as far as, me helping you grow your social media platforms, etc., I could do that. I could be that guy. And they definitely, took me on. King Ugly Truth, he's the owner and the CEO of Ugly Truth Apparel in America. His brand is very well known. He was one of the people who gave me an opportunity to edit his content. I was very grateful for that. Queen Empress Say, she gave me an opportunity to do that as well. Queen Angela, she's always looking out for me. Queen Sardell, always looking out for me. Queen Gia, Queen Edwina, doing the same thing. So I was just so grateful for these individuals who I never came to them in like a begging state or like, oh, I'm struggling. And if I did, it was not intentional. But I never wanted people to see me when I was down. I wanted people to know that, hey, look, I'm not going to beg you for an opportunity, but I am going to let you know if you ever need me to do something, I can definitely be that guy. And I'm grateful that they gave me an opportunity to do so. And it definitely helped me, economically speaking, stay on my feet. But the biggest supporter that I had was my mom. And she, you know, called in so many people who helped raise me back home in America. And it was my grandfather, my Uncle Byron, my Uncle JJ, so many of my cousins and aunts and uncles who came together and helped me when they saw that I needed it the most. So I'm so grateful for my mom always being that phenomenal leader that she's always been. My third biggest regret was not being economically stable. But if it wasn't for all the people that I just mentioned, you know, I wouldn't have, you know, gotten back on my feet economically while staying in the motherland. My second biggest regret is not knowing the language. You know, before you go anywhere, no matter what part of the world you're going to, you need to know the local language or the native language. If you don't, you're going to be confused. You're going to be surrounded by a whole bunch of people who you're confusing and you're being confused by because you don't know what they're saying and you don't know their culture. So before I went to Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia, these different places, I didn't know the local language, and it caused a lot of problems. A lot of people couldn't trust me for a while. So I had to swallow my pride and I had to say, look, I just can't come over here speaking English all the time. I have to come over here and speak their native languages or either learn what they're saying so that way we can communicate properly. And that's what I ended up doing. So I always made it my mission whenever I go someplace, learn the language within 3 months. And that's what I've done. So my best advice to people who are traveling over to any part of the world that you're not familiar with is learn the culture, learn the language before you get there. So that way, when you get there, you know, you can feel comfortable, and the people who are natives of that land will feel comfortable around you as well. Number one biggest regret is missing out on all the things that were happening back home, being homesick. And the reason is because before I left to go overseas, I was told by my mother, my sister, and a few other relatives, Reggie, you're not living life. I was working security. I was doing films here and there. I was doing my music, but I wasn't spending time with family. Life was just passing me by, and I basically was miserable. I didn't know what having fun or enjoying life really was. And, you know, there were times where I made sporadic appearances at events, family functions, etc. And what really got me choked up was when I would have a good time, but I would have to leave the event early because I had to go to work. And I remember the sad faces that I saw on my relatives' face, primarily my mom and my sister. And when I was driving back, you know, or when I was driving home, or when I was driving to go to work, I would get emotional because I'm like, man, you know, I'm missing out on something great. I'm missing out on my sister growing up. I'm missing out on my mom doing a phenomenal job raising my sister. I could have helped, you know, in some way, somehow. And, you know, I'll never get those moments back. I missed out on so many of my relatives who enjoyed life right before they passed away. And, you know, I know a lot of people will say, Reggie, but, you know, you always mention how you can be there spiritually. Yeah, but there's something about not being there in person and hugging your mom, hugging your sister, hugging your relatives when they make an accomplishment. They're getting married for the first time, having a child for the first time, and telling them how proud of them you are. That's what I missed out on. But I'm glad to say that I did have opportunities to go back and visit, and I did have an opportunity to right my wrongs. And I'm glad to say that my family is doing just fine without me being there. And it just goes to show how phenomenal of a people they are. And I'm glad to say that I'm proud of each and every one of them. Now, that is my biggest regret, but I'm happy to say that it's a blessing in disguise. A few moments ago, you all heard me mention how I actually went back to visit my home in Houston, Texas. And to see how that went, click the link on screen.